It's a new month, which means a new meta. Which of your favorite budget decks are going to make their way to the top? Cimoooooooo! What's going on, guys? It's Cimoooooooo. So today I'm bringing to you my top 5 competitive budget decks for the June 2017 format. Now, this video is going to specifically focus on the June 12th format, mainly because we're only a few weeks away from the format shifting, and there's only maybe a couple of events that are still going to be going on, maybe a couple regionals here and there, but for the most part, this format is completely wrapped up, so there really isn't a lot of purpose in dwelling on what's going to soon be the past, and we really want to look onto the future for what budget decks you guys might want to play if you're trying to compete without having to break the bank. So starting off, for honorable mentions, you guys are going to think I've lost my fucking mind, but we actually have barrier statues in the honorable mention slot. That's right, barrier statues have fallen all the way down this far. Now, there's a very simple reason for this though, and that's mainly because of the existence of True Draco in the meta. True Draco does not rely on special summoning in the least, and so the issue that poses against barrier statues in that regard is that if you are going to an event playing barrier statues, if you can manage to win every dice roll going up against Zodiac players, then you're going to be in for one hell of a time because they're not going to be able to do, jack shit against you. But when you come up against the True Draco Zodiac players or the pure True Draco players, the deck that does not rely on special summoning at all and can summon a 2950 beater that has built-in destruction capabilities, barrier statues they struggle to kind of deal with that, and it's not impossible by any means, but it's a very unfavorable matchup, and because Masterpiece alongside Dragonic Diagram are just surging in popularity, especially with Nationals coming up here in America, it's not the most ideal budget deck that you're going to want to build moving forward, but that doesn't mean it's a terrible choice. You'll still be able to do well if your local meta is comprised of like all Zodiac players or all players that are playing decks that highly rely on special summoning, so it's just something to keep in mind, and it also is a very cheap deck, so if that's really all your budget can take, then that's totally fine as well. But moving on to the top 5, starting off at number 5, we actually have Diagramless True Draco. Now, True Draco is a really powerful deck in and of itself, but the deck actually has a lot of capabilities even without a card like Dragonic Diagram. Now, don't get me wrong, Dragonic Diagram is one hell of an amazing card, and you shouldn't expect a deck to function like it would with a card than it would without, but that doesn't mean True Draco is completely incapable of functioning without Dragonic Diagram in the presence of the deck. The deck can still function just fine. You can pick up a couple copies of Masterpiece, which Masterpiece is pretty much going to be the only real expensive card you need for the deck. Everything else, like the Trap card, all of the other monsters like Majesty's Maiden and Dynamite Fighter, and all these other cards, they're actually really, really cheap. And so if you can pick them up right now, because the deck doesn't require an extra deck, you could probably build the main deck for that deck for under $100, maybe $150 at the max, depending on how much you're willing to spend, and you're still going to see some success, mainly because of Masterpiece. Masterpiece is so hard for so many different decks to out that even though you see players running Masterpiece in decks like, True Draco Zodiac, or they kind of splash Masterpiece and Diagram into other decks, when it's in its own deck where it pretty much shines the most because all of the cards in the deck are synergizing around this one beast of a boss monster, the deck is going to do well, and we've seen some results from that as well. So I feel confident in saying that you could do pretty well with this deck, mainly just because Masterpiece is just a completely unfair card in a lot of different respects. Now, moving on to number 4, we've got a classic here. It's Chainburn. I have to keep talking about Chainburn because even though the Fusion Substitute combo post-June 12th is going to be just completely eradicated, Chainburn still has a lot of viability in this meta, mainly because of Zodiac's prevalence and Zodiac's ability to just generate so much card advantage, and also due to the fact that Zodiac, especially Zodiac, but like True Draco as well, these decks don't really have built-in outs to stop Chain Burn and what it does best. So when your opponent is using cards like True Draco Heritage, Card of Demise, they're doing their Zodiac combos with their Emeralds and plussing and doing all this crazy stuff, that just purely plays into the hands of you as a Chain Burn player and allows you to capitalize on their ability to maximize their card advantage, because you really don't give a shit, because your cards are specifically designed to not only burn your opponent into oblivion, but also to just completely stall them out and prevent them from winning the game through their own win condition. And since we're in a format as well where cards like My Body's a Shield and Instant Fusion and, you know, all these cards that require life point costs, Solemn Strike, Solemn Warning, Solemn Scolding even as well, the more cards that players play that require paying life points, the easier it is for Chain Burn to achieve its win condition, and it just all plays into the hands of Chain Burn. So as much as I just despise playing against Chain Burn, as a budget player, it's a very, very solid option, and as long as you don't mind not making friends ever for the rest of your life, then it's a very good choice you can pick moving forward. It doesn't require an extra deck. The side deck options are very different than most traditional decks, and you're really just trying to side for specific matchups, so you can even build the main and the side deck for probably under $150, but the main deck at most is pretty much comprised of like all common cards, so it's really easy for anyone to just pick up a Chain Burn deck and go. And the last thing I forgot to mention as well is, in terms of the side decks, now that Paleozoic is completely out of the meta, no one's siding Royal Decree, no one is siding Denko Sekka. Any of these power cards that people were siding against trap-heavy decks are completely out of player side decks. You might see one or two people side them at regionals because they're scared to play a deck like that, but for the most part, in terms of high competitive tier play, not a lot of people are running stuff like that, and cards like Unending Nightmare don't do anything against Chain Burn because they can't destroy it, so it's just absolutely an amazing solid option if you're looking for something really cheap. Now, moving on to number 3 is actually a deck I never thought I would be putting on here, but it's actually gotten to the point that it's so cheap that it's very affordable for a lot of you guys, and it's actually going to be Metalfoes. Now, Metalfoes is primarily comprised of a lot of different commons and rares, but I want to talk about Metalfoes here for a couple different reasons. First off, it is one of the most consistent archetypes you could ever possibly play, mainly because you can just set all your scales, pop them, get search other cards out of your deck, and pretty much fix your hands in specific ways for how you need them. Second of all, this deck can abuse a card like Balbaboon to no end, because all of your Metalfoes scales can pop Balbaboon, meaning you can fix your hands through Balbaboon's effect, you get more Balbaboons, and then you have an automatic rank 3 play, which is absolutely amazing. Now, you also have really strong fusion monsters in cards like Orichalc and things like that, they're just, these cards are common cards, and yet they can just be absolutely destructive depending on the right circumstance. I mean, double piercing in a format where we've got like 0 defense monsters lying around everywhere like Trident and Seraphinite, like that can just completely end a game out of nowhere. And then you also have the fact that because Metalfoes is a pendulum-based deck, you can abuse the pendulum mechanic, and because you have a monster like Volflame, which is 2400 attack, that you're obviously going to run 3 of, the deck has a lot of offensive capabilities as well. Now, the interesting thing about Metalfoes is that because the deck is so cheap, and I mean so cheap, this deck is, I can't even describe to you how like rock bottom it is to build a Metalfoes deck from scratch currently. You actually have the ability, if you desire, to play a small Zodiac engine in your Metalfoes deck. You can just play a couple copies of Rapier, and hell, even like 1 copy of Whiptail, or even a Ram if you want as well, but I think that's going a little bit too far. So let's just say 1 Whiptail, 2 Rapier, and then you could play something like a Hammer Kong, a Tiger Mortar, a Broad Bull, and a Trident, and that's only going to cost you like $30, and because the Metalfoes deck is so cheap, you can sustain something like that, and you already have the Balbaboon, so you can pick up a copy of MX Saber Invoker, which is about like $8 to $10 right now as well. So you've got to play now for your Balbaboon to go into Invoker to just start doing all the traditional Zodiac plays, and that's just really fucking awesome. I never thought I'd be able to actually recommend a splashed Zodiac engine in any deck, but because Metalfoes is just so affordable, you can actually pull it off if you so desire. And if you don't want to go that route, you can even spend some money on a couple copies of Solemn Strike, which is a little bit of a pricey card, but because Metalfoes is so cheap, you you can afford to do that. So I really love seeing this, and Metalfoes has proven success as well. It got top 8 at the LA Regional, which if you guys don't know, LA Regionals are like a fucking YCS in terms of attendance. They get anywhere from 700 to sometimes 1,000 fucking people. So getting top 8 at an event like LA Regionals, and it wasn't playing like a full-blown zoo engine or wasn't playing really anything expensive, that's absolutely amazing. And so that's why I highly want to recommend Metalfoes as a budget option. Now moving on to number 2, we have Kozmo. Kozmo is just a deck I've been talking about recently, and I've really been on a high because Kozmo just does so much to stop decks, specifically True Draco, or more specifically than that, Masterpiece, because of cards like Kozmo Dark Destroyer, Kozmo Dark Eclipser, and because the cards are untargetable, it has an inherently good matchup against Zodiac. We've seen Kozmo actually be doing well on the national front in Europe, and as well here at some regionals and some more lower level tournaments here in America as well, because it just has that inherent matchup. Now, again, it does suffer from some consistency issues, which Kozmo Town can kind of fix, but you've got all these little tricks that Kozmos can do, and if you can pretty much play through the consistency issues, or if you can just draw the absolute nuts, it can be a really tough matchup for anyone to try to beat going up against Kozmo. Now for the number 1 pick, this might not come as a surprise because it was the same one as last month. I'm talking about True King Dinosaurs. I have to talk about this deck because as much as I love all the other decks I've talked about in this month's top 5 competitive budget decks, there's still something about just being able to buy 3 structure decks, buying 3 copies of True King Lithosogym, you know, the Fire True King Agnimazod, he's down now to like maybe $7 or $8 a copy. You know, you could just buy those True Kings and the extra deck monsters that you really only need, like Lagia and Dolka, are only a couple bucks for the lowest rarity copies. The fact that you just have this incredibly powerful deck that you can just do so many powerful things, it really just, you've got this amazing built-in boss monster that comes in your structure deck that's just asking and begging to be abused. It's just something I have to put for the number 1 option, because when you're looking at how much it costs to play this game, you really can't beat that just by buying 3 structure decks and only a couple cards to pick up. This deck can do some absolutely amazing things. But guys, that's gonna do it for my top 5 budget decks for the June 12th format. Let me know down in the comments what your guys' top budget picks are and why you think I should include them in next month's when we're gonna discuss the post-link format. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and if you found this video helpful, consider backing me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.